The Korean People's Navy patrol boat that crossed the northern limit line at 14:06 local time on a gray Wednesday afternoon did so with the specific energy of an institution that has spent decades telling itself it is 10 feet tall. The NLL, the de facto maritime boundary in the Yellow Sea, established at the armistice in 1953 and disputed by Pyongyang in roughly every forum available for disputing things, had been calm that morning, the way the NLL is often calm. The kind of quiet that is actually the sound of two heavily armed entities maintaining a professional distance from each other, while staring with uninterrupted focus across a line in the water. Then the patrol boat crossed it. The vessel was an Osa-II class fast attack craft, a Soviet-designed missile boat that had entered production in 1965, and which the Korean People's Navy had maintained, with characteristic institutional resolve, in something approaching operational condition across the intervening 6 decades. It crossed the NLL at 27 knots, turned southwest, and held course toward the ROK coastline, as though it had somewhere specific to be, and was confident about its welcome. The patrol boat commander had his orders. The orders, as reconstructed later from signals intelligence and the operational pattern of previous NLL provocations, were to cross the line, proceed to a position that would force a ROK or U.S. naval response, hold long enough to be photographed demonstrating North Korean willingness to challenge the boundary, and return north before the situation could develop in a direction requiring a definition of the word consequences. It was a recipe that the KPN had cooked before. It was a recipe designed to generate a propaganda photograph and a diplomatic talking point without generating an exchange of fire, because even Pyongyang understands the difference between a provocation and a catastrophe. The patrol boat commander understood his assignment. He was good at his job. His job on this Wednesday was to be seen. He was about to be seen considerably more thoroughly than he had been briefed to expect. 43 nautical miles to the southwest, USS Chung-Hoon was on day 11 of a Yellow Sea Presence patrol. Day 11 of any deployment is the day when the initial deployment energy has fully metabolized and the watch rotation has settled into the rhythm that it will maintain until the relief date, which feels a great deal further away on day 11 than it did on day 1. The Yellow Sea in autumn has weather that surface warfare officers describe professionally as operationally acceptable, and describe personally, to each other, as relentlessly gray and unpleasant. The sea state was 2 meters, building slightly from the southwest. Low overcast, ceiling at approximately 1,800 feet. The kind of ceiling that makes helicopter operations a careful conversation between the flight deck officer and the ship's weather picture. The SH-60B assigned to USS Chung-Hoon, the helicopter that would normally extend the ship's surveillance envelope by 60 nautical miles in any direction and provide the airborne sensor coverage that surface radar misses in coastal clutter environments, was on the hangar deck. It had been on the hangar deck since 9:15 that morning, when the aviation maintenance officer had flagged a main gearbox vibration anomaly that required inspection before the aircraft could fly again. The inspection had been in progress for 5 hours and 41 minutes. Estimated completion, approximately 90 minutes from now. The flight deck was, for the present, an expensive and temporarily decorative feature of the ship. This matters. The Yellow Sea's geography near the NLL is a coastal zone full of islands. Baekneungdo to the north, Yeonpyeongdo, a dozen smaller formations creating the kind of radar clutter that coastal geography inflicts on surface search radar with complete indifference to operational requirements. The SPY-1D phased array aboard USS Chung-Hoon is an exceptional system. It is not, however, a system that can resolve an Osa-II class patrol boat traveling at 27 knots through the radar shadow of a Korean island chain from 43 miles without some geometry working in its favor. The SH-60B, airborne at even moderate altitude, would have provided the look-down geometry that cuts through coastal clutter. The SH-60B was having its gearbox inspected. The coastal clutter was not inspecting anything. It was simply being clutter, which it had been doing since before the armistice, and which it would continue doing with or without the flight deck officer's feelings about the matter. At 14:06, the SPY-1D was tracking 37 surface contacts in the northern Yellow Sea. Merchant traffic ROK patrol vessels on standard station. A Chinese container ship on the southern transit lane making 16 knots toward Incheon with the focused purpose of commercial shipping everywhere. The 38th contact appeared at 14:08. It was not a clean acquisition. The contact materialized from behind the radar shadow of a small island formation at a range of 31 nautical miles, meaning it had been in motion behind the clutter for some time before the SPY-1D's geometry allowed it a clear line to the contact. The system classified it in 11 seconds. Surface contact, small combatant class, high speed, bearing 035, course 220, speed 27 knots. The emission profile from the SLQ-32 resolved the contact's radar type in a further 6 seconds. Square-tie surface search radar, a system developed in the Soviet Union in the late 1960s and resident in the threat library with the comfortable familiarity of an old acquaintance. The contact was painted, classified, and entered into the tactical picture. The contact was 31 miles away and had been across the NLL for approximately 2 minutes before USS Chung-Hoon's radar acquired it. Those 2 minutes are what the after-action report would flag as the vulnerability window, and they deserve to be understood before the rest of the story makes them feel smaller than they were. 31 miles is not a comfortable range from a fast attack craft carrying P-15 Termit anti-ship missiles, a sea-skimming system that entered Soviet service in 1960, and which the KPN has maintained in a state professional analysts describe as functional with caveats. At 27 knots, the patrol boat was closing at about 30 feet per second. The SH-60B was in the hangar with its gearbox open. The coast of North Korea was 38 miles to the northeast. The clutter geometry had handed the patrol boat a 2-minute window that no tactical planning had created. Just geography and bad timing, collaborating without being asked. For those 2 minutes, the situation had been, in the specific vocabulary of people who write after-action reports about near misses, suboptimal. The tactical action officer acknowledged the contact with the precise tone of someone who has been trained to maintain the same vocal register, whether reporting a weather system or a high-speed inbound combatant. Bridge combat. New surface contact, bearing 035, range 31. Probable KPN fast attack craft, cross NLL, course 220, speed 27. Weapons state unknown. All stations, weapons release hold. Confirm classification ongoing. He did not say, brace yourselves. He did not say anything that would appear in a training video under the heading, what not to do under pressure. He said what the situation required in the words, the situation required. He picked up his coffee. The coffee had been brewed at 1300 and had reached the temperature that serious watch standards acknowledge as the thermal point of no return. Not cold enough to put down, not warm enough to be described as coffee in any aspirational sense. He drank it. The contact was at 30 miles in closing. The commanding officer was in CIC at 14:09, 45 seconds after the initial contact report. The watch had executed the first response checklist in the intervening time with the mechanical efficiency of a crew that drills this evolution and expects it to happen. Because in the Yellow Sea, it periodically does. USS Chung-Hoon came to battle stations at 14:10. The hangar deck was notified. Estimated time to aircraft readiness was now a factor in the tactical picture, and the flight deck officer was asked, in the professional shorthand of a ship at battle stations, what he could do about that. The flight deck officer looked at the gearbox inspection. He had a conversation with the aviation maintenance officer that both men would later describe as frank. The aircraft would be ready for launch in 65 minutes. This was not 65 minutes the tactical situation had room to store comfortably, but it was the number the gearbox provided. And gearboxes do not negotiate. The ROK Navy destroyer 20 miles to the southeast had already altered course at 18 knots. The ROK Joint Operations Center had the picture within 90 seconds of USS Chung-Hoon's first contact report, and the alert chain to 7th Fleet Duty Officer at Yokosuka had turned over before the patrol boat completed its second minute across the NLL. The alerts moved faster than the patrol boat. This is, functionally, the whole point of networked naval operations. And it is not a point that the patrol boat's square-tie radar was equipped to observe. At 14:14, the second element appeared. The SLQ-32 detected an airborne radar emission on bearing 018, range 104 nautical miles, altitude increasing rapidly through 8,000 feet, speed 420 knots, Kanimai. Want Kondorasakimiaix, the Isabarestan Sao, Hoveres Paniai, P. Y. 1D confirmed the contact 7 seconds later. The emission profile resolved in 4 seconds against the threat library. RP-29 Pulse Doppler Fire Control Radar, MiG-29 Fulcrum. The Korean People's Air Force had scrambled an intercept. Now is the moment to discuss the MiG-29, because it deserves an honest accounting. The MiG-29 Fulcrum is not a bad aircraft. When it entered Soviet service in 1983, it was a genuinely capable air superiority fighter. Agile, fast, with a look-down, shoot-down radar capability that NATO planners took seriously in the 1980s, and an infrared search and track system that could acquire targets without broadcasting radar emissions. The North Korean MiG-29 specifically is a Fulcrum A variant that arrived in the country in the early 1990s as part of a transaction that Soviet and then Russian arms export records describe with considerable vagueness. The airframe, in its original specification, was competitive with the aircraft it might have encountered over Central Europe in a Cold War scenario. That scenario did not occur. The Cold War ended. The aircraft did not get the subsequent development that kept the MiG-29's later variants current. The North Korean examples maintained in the specific economic environment of a country where spare parts require creativity and where fuel availability shapes training calendars with a bluntness that no flight operations manual would endorse, were operational. In the way that things are operational when you define operational generously and check certain instruments less frequently than the manufacturer recommends. North Korean MiG-29 pilots are estimated to fly between 15 and 25 hours per year. A student pilot at a civilian flight school in the United States accumulates 40 to 60 hours before their first solo flight. This is not a gap in training schedules. It is a gap in the fundamental category of competence that flight hours build. The automatic, unreflective proficiency that only repetition produces. The kind that lets a pilot manage a complex air intercept while simultaneously processing threat warnings, navigation constraints, fuel state, and the specific instructions coming from a ground controller who is also working from a picture that is several generations behind the one USS Chung-Hoon's combat system, was updating 400 times per second. The MiG-29 approaching from the north had, in its cockpit, a radar that U.S. threat libraries had been cataloging since the Reagan administration, and a pilot doing a job that required 200 hours of annual practice with approximately 15. A known quantity, closing at 7 miles per minute. The F/A-18F on strip alert aboard USS Ronald Reagan, 212 miles to the southeast, was airborne at 14:17. At Mach 1.6, time to intercept was 22 minutes. The MiG-29 would be at visual range of the surface action before the Hornet could achieve weapons parameters. This was noted. Also noted, the MiG-29 carried no weapons active radar mode indication. It was a declaratory presence, sent to confirm that Pyongyang was watching and had an air force. The tactical action officer logged the flight profile with the clinical precision of someone making a record for the after-action report, and not yet for anything else. The patrol boat, meanwhile, had reached 22 nautical miles from USS Chung-Hoon at 14:19, and had been holding a steady course for 13 minutes. It had not maneuvered. It had not activated the P-15's targeting radar, a fact that the SLQ-32 had been confirming every 6 seconds since acquisition, because the specific emission of the P-15's active seeker would appear in the threat library as one of the least ambiguous signals in the entire catalog, and its appearance would transition the tactical picture from one category of situation into a categorically different one. The seeker had not activated. The patrol boat was making a point. It was not, in the current tactical assessment, making an approach. At 14:21, the commanding officer made the decision the tactical picture supported. USS Chung-Hoon altered course to open the range and increase speed to 20 knots. This is not a retreat. USS Chung-Hoon was not retreating from a threat it could not handle. It was performing the tactically sound maneuver of a warship, with no legal basis to engage an adversary not yet at the engagement threshold. A helicopter in the hangar, a MiG-29 40 miles north, and rules of engagement, written by people who understand Korean theater escalation dynamics, with more sophistication than any single watch officer can replicate under real-time pressure. The ship moved. The range began to open. At 14:23, the patrol boat stopped. It held its position at 24 nautical miles for 8 minutes. Then, at 14:31, it turned north at 22 knots and crossed back over the NLL. The MiG-29 turned north at 14:29. It had never closed below 68 miles. Its RP-29 radar had illuminated USS Chung-Hoon twice, briefly, in what the SLQ-32 characterized as search mode sweeps rather than targeting locks. Both illuminations had been logged with complete fidelity. Frequency, pulse width, scan rate, duration. The aircraft had contributed, without knowing it, to the most useful North Korean air radar characterization the European Theater Intelligence Cell had received in 8 months. This is the point where the intelligence picture demands its own chapter. And this channel is the only place the chapter gets written in full. The square tie radar on the Osa-II patrol boat had been in active emission mode from the moment it crossed the NLL. This was necessary for the patrol boat's navigation and situational awareness in the coastal clutter environment, and it was completely understandable. And it was also an uninterrupted transmission on a frequency that the SLQ-32 had been cataloging across the entirety of the encounter. The square tie is not a modern system. Its frequency profile is well documented in every US and NATO electronic warfare library. But frequency profile documentation from a single historical source is different from a continuous real-world emission record from an operational asset in active use. What the SLQ-32 had collected was the latter. 23 minutes of square tie operation across the complete engagement, including 3 mode transitions that occurred when the patrol boat maneuvered, each one revealing a specific firmware characteristic that indicated a modification to the system's original Soviet specifications. North Korea had updated the square tie, not dramatically, not in a way that fundamentally changed the system's capabilities. But the update was there, in the emission data, visible to anyone with the right receiver and the patience to look. The SLQ-32 had both. The MiG-29's contribution was proportionally more interesting. The RP-29's 2 illumination sweeps had lasted a combined 9.4 seconds. Not long, but at the signal-to-noise ratio available at 68 miles in the Yellow Sea's atmospheric conditions. Long enough for the SLQ-32 to characterize the transmitter power output, the specific pulse shaping of the current firmware version, and the scan rate in both illuminations. Cross-referencing these against the existing library, entry produced something the electronic warfare officer had not expected. The transmitter power output was 7% higher than the documented baseline. This is not a large number. In the context of a 1980s pulse Doppler radar, a 7% transmitter power increase is a maintenance indicator. It suggests either a component replacement with a slightly different specification or an active tuning decision. Either answer is intelligence. The electronic warfare officer wrote both possibilities in his collection notes and flagged the file for the theater specialists. "Sir," the electronic warfare officer said to the executive officer at 14:34, 3 minutes after the patrol boat had recrossed the NLL, "I want to give you a summary of what I've been collecting for the past 28 minutes. He did not wait for the affirmative before continuing. Because people who have been doing exciting collection do not always wait for the affirmative. Square tie modified firmware, 3 transition signatures, documented. MiG-29, RP, 29 transmitter anomaly, 7% above baseline, documented. I also have the patrol boat's communications on a secondary frequency, partially encrypted, partially clear. The clear portions include a fuel state report and what I believe is a disagreement about the return schedule." He paused. The patrol boat commander wanted to stay longer. His superiors told him to come home. I have both sides of the conversation. He permitted himself a brief pause. "I'm having a very good afternoon." The executive officer looked at the collection summary on the EW console display. "Oh, it was comprehensive." "Oh, get it on link 16, he said. "Oh, all of it." It was already on link 16. It had been on link 16 since 1411. The F/A-18F from USS. Ronald Reagan arrived in the operational area at 1439, 8 minutes after the patrol boat recrossed the NLL. The pilot established communications with USS Chung-Hoon's Combat Information Center, received the tactical picture summary, confirmed that both KPN assets had withdrawn, and then remained on station for 40 minutes. Not because anything further was expected, but because 40 minutes of visible presence at supersonic cruise is a statement made in the language that air forces understand. The pilot logged the patrol area, noted no further activity on the relevant bearings, and returned to the carrier. His total flight time for the Evolution was 1 hour and 12 minutes. He would log more flight time on that single mission than a North Korean MiG-29 pilot logs in a median month. He was not informed of this statistic. He was aware of it. Now the money. Total KPN and KPAF investment in the afternoon's provocation, approximately $30,000. 1 Osa-II sortie, 1 MiG-29 scramble, fuel, crew time, coordination overhead. Pyongyang gets remarkable provocation per dollar from its aged fleet. This is perhaps its most consistent operational achievement. USS Chung-Hoon's response. Battle stations for 3 hours at $85,000 in ship operating overhead. F/A-18F scramble from USS Ronald Reagan adding $60,000. Total direct U.S. response cost, approximately $190,000. The intelligence package value, as assessed by the Theater J2 in the quarterly review, approximately $2.8 million in collection cost equivalents. What it would cost to achieve comparable. Square tie firmware characterization, MiG-29 transmitter anomaly data, and KPN command communications pattern through satellite passes and SIGINT aircraft missions. The patrol boat handed all three over in 28 minutes of routine operation. The argument between the patrol boat commander and his superiors about the return schedule was, in the collection team's assessment, less strategically valuable. But the electronic warfare officer noted it in his collection log, with a small asterisk. The asterisk had no formal meaning in the collection protocol. It expressed in one typographical character that some details are the kind you remember. The Korean Central News Agency broadcast aired at 2100 that evening. The anchor, speaking with the absolute conviction of someone delivering facts rather than constructed narrative, reported that the naval forces of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea had conducted a successful demonstration patrol near the disputed boundary line, that the presence of the People's Army had forced a U.S. naval vessel to change course and withdraw from the area, and that the operation demonstrated the inviolable maritime sovereignty of the Democratic People's Republic over its adjacent waters. The broadcast showed archival footage of a KPN vessel underway, not the Osa-II, which had already returned to port, but a vessel of similar type, filmed in conditions that did not suggest the Yellow Sea in autumn. The graphics were authoritative. The delivery was measured. The framing was internally consistent in the specific way that state media framing is always internally consistent, which is to say, it was consistent with itself and with nothing else observable from outside its own production. What the broadcast did not mention, that USS Chung-Hoon's course change was a tactically sound maneuver, not a withdrawal under pressure, that the SPY-1D had painted the Osa-II continuously from island clutter to NLL crossing, that the MiG-29 never closed below 68 miles, that the patrol boat commander had wanted to stay longer and been told to come home, that the electronic warfare officer had described the afternoon as very good, that the SH-60B was certified mission capable by 1630, that the F/A-18F pilot had accumulated more flight time on the scramble response than a median North Korean MiG-29 pilot accumulates in 30 days. The KCNA broadcast reached its audience and produced whatever effect it was designed to produce. The intelligence package from the afternoon's collection reached USS Ronald Reagan's intelligence cell at 1715, the 7th Fleet J-2 at 1840, and the Pacific Command Joint Intelligence Center at 2005. The theater specialists who received the modified square tie firmware characterization sent back an acknowledgement that described the data as highly actionable and requested follow-on collection at the next available opportunity. The electronic warfare officer received this response at 22:18 while he was off watch. He read it, nodded in the way of someone whose professional assessment of the afternoon has been confirmed by people whose opinion he respects, and went to find something to eat. The galley was offering what the menu board called beef and rice option, and what the previous watch described, with the specific authority of eyewitnesses, as more accurately, a rice option with beef in an advisory capacity. He ate it. Day 11 of any deployment calibrates expectations in a direction that works out well for galley operations. The after-action report was filed at 23:45, 12 pages, with an intelligence annex distributed above the operations officer's clearance level. The executive summary confirmed USS Chung-Hoon had completed all operational objectives. KPN and KPAF assets had withdrawn without incident, and the SH-60B was mission-capable as of 1630. Under Lessons Learned, the summary noted that coastal clutter geometry near the northern Yellow Sea island formations created an approximately 2-minute detection lag for small high-speed contacts from the Korean coast, a factor already in the theater tactical notes, now confirmed and quantified by the day's contact, with a precision the theoretical model had never previously achieved. The operations officer read this, noted that the afternoon's vulnerability window had just closed a gap in the tactical model that had existed for years, and submitted the updated figure to 7th Fleet. The patrol boat was at anchor by 1645. The MiG-29 back in its revetment by 1547. The pilot's total flight time for the mission was 44 minutes, a meaningful fraction of his estimated annual allocation. The patrol boat commander filed his after-action report describing a successful KPN demonstration. The argument about the return schedule was not mentioned. The SLQ-32's recording of both sides of that argument was in a classified file in Yokosuka. The patrol boat commander did not know the file existed. The file knew about the report. That is the operational asymmetry, expressed in the most concrete possible terms. The Osa-II crossed the NLL looking for a photograph. It found one. It also provided 28 minutes of free graduate education to the people it had been sent to impress. And there is nothing in KPN operational doctrine about how to account for that on an after-action form. Bye, for now.